Representatives are asking for more help from the federal government. Fox 31 political reporter Gabrielle Franklin is on it. Gabrielle.
Yeah, Erica, it's something that city leaders here in Denver have been calling on for a while. More federal help from the government to aid migrants. Now the calls are growing louder and the patience is getting thin.
We have never received on the migrant response direct support from the federal government.
Amanda Blaurock is a co-founder of the Village Exchange Center in Aurora. The center helps anywhere between 500 to 700 families a week, providing wraparound services.
We do have support via the state, the Office of New Americans. We have about $250,000 that we received that came from the FEMA dollars of $2.5 million that came to the state. That money is used for our food pantry that helps supply hygiene products, our security guards, and also food to individuals that are here.
The funds they received from the state just started going towards their work in December.
I don't think we should leave Denver or Colorado and holding the financial end of the stick. The federal government needs to step in and help, and it should.
U.S. Senator Michael Bennet and Colorado's other Democratic congressional members wrote a letter to FEMA this month, urging the federal government to step up by increasing funding for FEMA's shelter and services program to include more cities and nonprofits. Bennet saying relief should be coming soon.
Shortly after Helene made landfall in the United States on September 26, Joe Biden was at his house in Rehoboth Beach. Vice President Kamala Harris was flying between ritzy California fundraisers, hobnobbing with celebrities. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas was in Los Angeles presiding over an award ceremony. How do you respond to those accusations from J.D. Vance?
Kate, we don't listen to or pay attention to such unproductive and, quite frankly, counterproductive words. And I will tell you another negative impact of this deliberately false information. It is demoralizing to the men and women at the federal level, at the state and local level, who are actually risking their lives to save others and to bring much needed relief to those who need it.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about this heated interview between Trump deranged CNN anchor Miss Kate Baldwin and Trump National Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, okay? Because Caroline Leavitt, Trump's National Press Secretary, is going to refuse to bend the knee to the mainstream liberal media and the mob, telling the Trump campaign to shut up about the truth, which is that the Biden administration used FEMA funds to help house and to facilitate illegal immigration into this country, okay? That is what they use funds for. Now, again, they're trying to play a semantics game here, a trick, by saying that, well, those funds weren't appropriated for disaster relief. Yes, they were FEMA funds, but they weren't shifted away from disaster relief. They were already there for the illegals. And the American people just don't give a damn, right? What people give a damn about is the fact that they spent over $1 billion helping facilitate illegal immigration into this country with FEMA funds. That's what people care about, okay? It's the fact that you use the funds to help illegals come into the country. That is what they did. They cannot get around that fact, and because they can't get around the fact, they want to shut people up, right? That's what they're trying to do, okay? They want to accuse you of being dangerous. You're spreading dangerous rhetoric by telling the truth, right? That is what they're saying on CNN and MSNBC, and Trump's National Press Secretary is going to refuse to back down from her claims, and this CNN anchor is going to get upset. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Is from the Trump campaign, is Trump's national press secretary for the campaign, Caroline Leavitt. Caroline, thank you for coming on. And the congressman there, he said that he doesn't necessarily like all that FEMA is doing, but he's pointed out that it's damaging the rumors that that is what is happening, the rumors that are circulating. And with regard to that, things that the former president has said is FEMA funds were stolen to be used to house illegal migrants, that no one from FEMA was on the ground in North Carolina, that funds were being withheld from Republican areas of the state on purpose. None of that is true. The head of FEMA says that worse than it not being true, it is dangerous that if this is pushed and circulated for the people who are most in need of help. With that knowledge, is the former president going to stop saying this?
Yeah, so anytime you know that there's some truth to the things being said is when Democrats say that it's dangerous, right? When they come out and say that what you're saying is dangerous, that's when you know that you're right over the target, right? That the things that are being said are in fact true, okay? Because Democrats, the first thing they do in order to stop people from telling the truth is to say that the truth is dangerous, right? So I'm just saying, the fact that they're now saying that criticizing FEMA is dangerous, it tells you everything you need to know.
Well, first of all, Kate, let me just express our thoughts and prayers are with everyone in Western North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, and now Florida who are bracing for another devastating hurricane. The bottom line is that FEMA spent $1 billion on funding for illegal immigrants that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden let into the country. CNN and many mainstream media outlets reported that more than a month ago. Now today, we find ourselves in a predicament where Americans are in dire situations in need of food and of water. And Secretary Mayorkas last week said that FEMA does not have sufficient funding to get through this crisis and through the rest of hurricane season.
But Caroline,
hold on. I was wondering how long it would take for this lady to interrupt her. And here's the first telltale sign. Watch how she's going to, I don't know what you would call this, how she put her lips together. She's like this. And then shortly after that, she's going to interrupt her. So let me go back a little bit. But once you get to know these people, you see what's going on. Watch.
Well, first of all, Kate, let me just express our thoughts and prayers are with everyone in Western North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, and now Florida who are bracing for another devastating hurricane. The bottom line is that FEMA spent $1 billion on funding for illegal immigrants that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden let into the country. CNN and many mainstream media outlets reported that more than a month ago. Now today, we find ourselves in a predicament where Americans are in dire situations in need of food and of water. And Secretary Mayorkas last week said that FEMA does not.
Look it. There she go. There she go. Before that, she did this. She was like, and she's about to interrupt this lady because she know what this lady's saying is true, but that's not a part of the narrative. So let's watch this little bit. Watch. This is just all fascinating to me. Watch.
Not have sufficient funding to get
Hold on. She's going to interrupt her. Watch.
Through this crisis and through the rest of hurricane season.
But Caroline,
speaking of Secretary Mayorkas,
Caroline, I wanted. We just had Secretary Mayorkas on, but no. But first, on that, let's keep to the facts, which is on that suggestion that Donald Trump did make that they were stealing money from FEMA and using it, and it's all gone because they're using it to house migrants. That's not true. There's no disaster relief fund money that was going to house migrants.
I don't think the American people care which pocket the money came from. They do care that their tax dollars, $1 billion of their tax dollars, went towards housing migrants. That came from FEMA's funds. That is a fact. It is reportable, and it's very likely to assume that that money could have been reallocated to the disaster relief fund that now could be used to help our fellow Americans that are in need from these hurricanes. And I would like to finish my previous point, and I heard you had Secretary.
Oh, did you see it? So this lady, I'm just focusing on this lady. She shifted and she adjusted herself in her chair. And if you didn't notice, the camera adjusted as well. Which means that they're all on the same page. Pay attention to body language. It says way more than speech. Nonverbal communication says way more than verbal communication. Let's watch it. Hold on. A little bit. Let's watch.
care which pocket the money came from. They do care that their tax dollars, 1 billion of their tax dollars, went towards housing migrants. That came from FEMA's funds. That is a fact. It is reportable, and it's very likely to assume that that money could have been reallocated to the disaster relief fund that now could be used to help our fellow Americans that are in need from these hurricanes. And I would like to finish my previous point.
And now she's going to interrupt.
Secretary Mayorkas on the show. I hope that you asked him about why he was shopping at a luxury men's warehouse store last week in the midst of this crisis, or why Kamala Harris was fundraising in San Francisco when Hurricane Helene made landfall, and why Joe Biden was sitting on the beach.
And now let's interrupt because this lady is making... It's interesting that today, when you just speak just straight up facts that make sense, then there's always some contention with the other side of it. So just tell the truth and what you've seen and what you know and what you researched. If that doesn't fit with what they're trying to do, which is called a narrative, then it's challenged. It's wrong. You have to believe what I believe. If you don't believe what I believe, you're wrong. We're going to prosecute you and all these type of things. So let's pay attention. Here she go.
President Trump had done that, there would be outrage, and there should be outrage at our current elected officials, leaders in office who were sitting on their hands when this hurricane was making landfall on the United States. There was a delayed
interruption. Follow the telltale signs.
I did ask the secretary.
6 days to deploy troops.
Caroline. I did. That's what I'm trying to say. I did ask him about that. He said he was actually in Los Angeles recognizing the work of employees of the Department of Homeland Security that are part of what we're talking about here. But let me ask you something. This is quite so. What I've heard, what you're now saying is that you think it is. You don't think American people care where the money comes from. You think it is bad that they're using FEMA money to house migrants. Ironically, Donald Trump attempted something very similar to what he falsely now is claiming about them. In 2019, Trump used FEMA. Let me finish. Trump used money from FEMA's disaster fund for migrant programs at the southern border. He told Congress that he was intending at the time in 2019 to shift $271 million from DHS, including $155 million from FEMA's disaster relief fund to pay for detaining and transporting undocumented immigrants. Less than that was transferred. From less than the 150 million was transferred, but money was transferred by Donald Trump in 2019 and the Trump administration from the FEMA disaster relief fund to house migrants. So is he then okay with moving disaster relief funds for dealing with migrants, but now is not?
Wow, you gotta love the whataboutism here, right? And the fake fact check from this woman. I'm gonna tell you why it's a fake fact check, because anybody who looks into this can see that it's not the same thing in regards to what they're talking about. They're trying to create a false equivalency. This is what they go to here, right? They'll find something that Trump did during his administration that they can spin as, well, Trump did it too, so therefore you shouldn't criticize Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Leave them alone, right? That's essentially what she's doing, okay? Because first and foremost, it was about $38 million that got moved from the disaster relief fund under the Trump administration to deport illegal immigrants, right? That's a big difference. I want you guys to understand that year in 2019, Trump said, okay, listen, we have a disaster at the border, right? I mean, that is a disaster when you have illegal immigrants invading the country. That is a disaster. He said, okay, we got to deport these people fast. We need some money. Now, 38 million is only a fraction. I mean, we're talking about like 1% of the overall budget. Now, that year in 2019, FEMA had a surplus. There was hundreds of millions of dollars that was transferred over into the next year because they already were sufficiently funded enough to handle any type of natural disaster relief and to take care of the American people. So what CNN is trying to do here is that they're trying to create a false equivalence between Trump taking extra money that FEMA had to deport illegal immigrants, which is a disaster, right? When you have illegals invading the border, he took just a tiny fraction, literally less than 1%, and said, okay, we're gonna use this money to deport illegals. We're not gonna use this money to help facilitate illegal immigrants staying in the country, which is what Biden did. $1 billion, not 38 million, $1 billion is what Biden did, okay? But again, according to this con artist, this propagandist on CNN, well, it's the same thing. No, it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. First and foremost, they'll tell you that, well, Biden didn't really do that. He didn't really take any money from disaster relief. But then when that doesn't work, right? When that doesn't work, what they default to is, well, Trump did it too. And it's like, no, Trump didn't actually do that. Okay, what Trump did was different for X, Y, and Z reasons. And again, he took the money to deport illegals, not to put illegals in expensive hotels, to give them houses, to give money to these nonprofits to help illegals take jobs from the American people, to help illegals come into the country. That is what Biden did. Trump didn't do that. And the amount of money that Trump took was so small that it was literally a drop in the bucket. In that same year, FEMA had a surplus that they carried over. So FEMA was already sufficiently funded. All of the priorities were taken care of, okay, in regards to what could happen if a disaster were to happen. They were not going to be needing more money. They were already good. So he took a small fraction to deport illegals. But CNN thinks that, oh, well, that's the same thing. Oh, well, he was using the money to house illegals. That's not actually what he was doing. He was using the money to deport the illegals. Yes, the illegals need temporary housing until they're deported, right? But the point was not to allow them into the country. What Biden is doing is that they're not housing illegals at the border anymore. They're just letting them into the country, right? And busing them and facilitating them staying into the country. Again, huge difference. Giving the money to ICE to help deal with it.
Don't forget that they're flying them in. They're flying them in. They're doing that as well.
Disaster at the border, okay, using some of that FEMA money that was already sufficiently funded, that had a surplus, is not the same thing as taking money from FEMA to help facilitate illegal immigration into the country, to help illegal immigrants break the law. It's not the same thing, okay? But CNN wants you to think that it's the same thing. Again, it's amazing how that works. Amazing how these so-called fact checkers, aka propaganda checkers, they don't actually go into the details of the facts that they claim that they're checking, right? It's just funny how that works, because again, it's not about fact checking. It's about propaganda and narrative checking. And that's exactly what's happening right here from this CNN anchor.
Is that what you're saying?
What President Trump didn't do is allow an open border policy for 4 years, allowing nearly 20 million illegal people into the country, stressing our public infrastructure in cities across the country, using taxpayer dollars to fund illegals and put them in luxury hotels like we've seen in New York City, to give them prepaid debit cards to buy clothing and food when the American people are suffering from the worst.
It's okay for Donald Trump to do it. It is not okay for the Biden administration to do it.
Yes, it is. In that situation, yes, it is. When you talk about taking less than 1% to deport illegals, okay, giving the money to ICE, okay, which represents 6% of ICE's budget, by the way, that 38 million. So ICE significantly underfunded, saying, hey, let's take some of this money where we already have enough money, right? We're going to be good in this. Let's divert some to deal with a disaster, which is the southern border. Yeah, in my opinion, I think that's okay. Absolutely. But what's not okay is to take $1 billion and to use that money to help facilitate illegals breaking the law. So yeah, that's the answer to that question. Yes, you're right. It is okay when Trump does it, and it's not okay when Biden does it, because they didn't do the same thing.
Caroline, it's okay. Donald Trump did that. Donald Trump did that in 2019, his administration.
President Trump did not allow an invasion of illegal immigrants into our country again and use billions of dollars to fund them in housing, to put them into luxury hotels. What he did do is use federal funding to deport them back to their home countries, which is something that Kamala Harris is refusing to do. And she is still yet to answer the question that if she is elected president in 28 days, what is she going to do with the 20 million illegal people that she has allowed into this country, including the convicted criminals? We know there's 425,000 convicted criminal illegal aliens in this country today. Kamala has yet to say whether or not she will deport them or keep them here and continue to use federal funding to house them and to give that, subsidize their lifestyle on the taxpayers' dime. President Trump won't tolerate that. He's going to launch the largest mass deportation operation in American history, and he will ensure that American citizens are being put first by their federal government, that they're...
All right, so dang. This video has turned into way longer than I thought it would be. So yeah, that's just gonna be the end of this video. But the point of it is, they tried to say Trump did the same thing as the Biden-Harris administration when it was so far from the truth. But the things that these people do is just so disingenuous, and the narrative continues, and they're just gonna continue it.